Texas looks open and honest. Long sight lines, straight highways, porch lights burning against a dark tree line. It feels safe because you can see for miles. But in certain counties, locals will tell you that seeing far is not the same as seeing everything. There is a fence line nobody checks after dark. A creek bed the dogs refuse to cross. A silence in the brush that means turn around, not walk closer. Every animal here has been documented inside Texas, confirmed through wildlife agency reports, park safety records, or researchers tracking exactly where the wild edges of this state now touch its backyards. Some of these animals are famous. Every Texan has a story about one of them. Others are barely discussed, which is exactly why they catch people off guard. But the most dangerous name on this list may not be the biggest, or the loudest, or the one with the scariest reputation. It may be the one people notice too late. To understand why, you have to understand the land itself. Texas is not one habitat. It is 5 or 6 stitched together into a single state line. Piney woods and black swamp water in the east. Rolling limestone hills and spring-fed rivers in the center. Desert mountains and dry arroyos in the far west. Marsh grass and barrier islands along the Gulf. And cutting through all of it, a wall of suburbs pushing further into ranchland every single year. That overlap is the real story. Neighborhoods now back up against brush country that used to be empty for miles. Trails cut through creek corridors predators have used for generations. Golf courses sit beside wetlands, and bus stops sit near drainage culverts leading straight into wild habitat. Wildlife officials have made the same observation for years. It is not that dangerous animals are moving toward people. It is that people keep moving toward them and calling it development. The first danger is not rare, and that is exactly the problem. Coyotes live in every one of Texas's 254 counties, from downtown Houston's storm drains to ranch fence lines outside Lubbock. People assume they know this animal. They have seen it trot across a field at dusk, maybe heard it yip somewhere past the property line, and filed it under harmless. Wildlife officials do not describe it that way. In cities like Austin and Dallas, animal control departments field regular reports of coyotes following small dogs on leashes and losing their fear of porch lights entirely. That loss of fear is the shift that matters. A coyote that no longer runs from headlights has learned humans are not a threat worth avoiding. Picture a suburban cul-de-sac at dusk, sprinklers ticking, a coyote pausing at the tree line just past the mailbox, watching a family unload groceries without moving. It is not lost. It is not confused. It is simply comfortable. But coyotes announce themselves. The next animal on this list gives far less warning before it acts. The western diamondback rattlesnake is the animal most people expect on a list like this. And locals in Central and West Texas will tell you the expectation is earned. It thrives in rock outcrops, dry creek beds, and the tall grass edging hiking trails from the hill country to the panhandle. Texas parks report more rattlesnake encounters in spring and early summer, when the snakes move between den sites and hunting grounds, often crossing the same paved trails hikers use every weekend. What people get wrong is the warning itself. The rattle is not a threat. It is a last resort, a sound made only after quieter signs have already been missed. A stillness in the grass, a coiled shape half hidden under a rock ledge. State health data consistently lists rattlesnakes among the leading causes of venomous bites in Texas, and officials note that many happen when someone tries to move, kill, or photograph the snake rather than simply stepping back. Picture a dry creek bed at midday, sun bleaching the rocks white, and a diamond-patterned coil resting exactly where a hiking boot is about to land. But if this animal warns before it strikes, the next one on this list often gives no warning at all. Spiders rarely make a list like this, but Texas hosts 2 species that quietly cause more harm each year than most people realize. The southern black widow favors woodpiles, garden sheds, and the undersides of porch furniture left untouched through a Texas summer. The brown recluse prefers boxes in garages, folded towels, and stacks of old furniture in barns and storage units. Both are shy. Neither hunts people. Both bite almost exclusively when a hand or foot corners them without warning. Poison control centers report steady numbers of bites each year from both species, most tied to yard work, cleaning out sheds or reaching blindly into dark spaces. A brown recluse bite can take days to reveal how serious it is, which is part of what makes it dangerous. The damage is slow, not sudden. Picture a garage in late summer, a stack of moving boxes untouched since spring, and a small brown shape pressed flat into the seam of the cardboard. Still, the next animal on this list is harder to see coming, and it does not travel alone. Feral hogs are not native to Texas, and that fact alone explains most of the danger. Introduced generations ago and now numbering in the millions statewide, feral hogs have no natural predator large enough to keep their population in check. They move in groups called sounders, root through cattle pastures and cornfields at night, and have adapted to nearly every habitat the state offers, from East Texas pine forest to suburban drainage corridors. State wildlife and agriculture agencies classify feral hogs as one of the state's most costly invasive species, responsible for extensive crop and property damage every year. The danger to people is smaller in raw numbers, but far more brutal in nature. A cornered sow with piglets nearby has been documented charging, and adult boars carry tusks capable of serious injury. Picture a moonlit cornfield at the edge of a subdivision, stalks trembling in a line that has nothing to do with wind, and a sounder of a dozen hogs moving through in total silence. But the real danger is not always the predator on four legs. Sometimes it comes with wings. Africanized honeybees, often called killer bees, established themselves in Texas decades ago and have never left. They look identical to ordinary honeybees, which is exactly why people underestimate them. The difference is not the sting, it is the response. Africanized colonies defend their hive far more aggressively, react from much greater distances, and will pursue a perceived threat for hundreds of yards. Texas beekeeping officials have documented Africanized colonies across the southern and central parts of the state, frequently found in wall cavities, old sheds, and hollow trees near ranch land. Attacks are rare, but when they happen, the volume of stings is what makes them dangerous, not the individual sting itself. Picture a rancher clearing brush near an old fence post, a low hum rising from a hollow in the wood, and a cloud lifting into the air before the sound even registers as a warning. That is where the story starts to widen, because the danger in Texas is rarely about one animal in one place. It is about a pattern. The real story is not that these animals exist here. It is that people are moving deeper into their territory every year, clearing brush, building trails, and expanding neighborhoods into land that was never truly empty. Wildlife officials describe it less as an invasion and more as a collision, one that has been building quietly for decades. The American alligator is the clearest example of that collision, and East Texas residents know it well. Alligators inhabit slow rivers, bayous, stock tanks, and drainage canals across the eastern third of the state, from the piney woods down through the Gulf Coast marshes. Populations have recovered strongly since federal protection decades ago, and officials now document them in waterways many residents assumed were too small or too close to town to hold one. What people misunderstand is patience. An alligator does not chase. It waits, motionless at the surface, eyes and nostrils barely breaking the waterline, for as long as it takes. Wildlife officials warn that most conflicts happen not because an alligator hunted a person, but because a person, a pet, or livestock entered water the animal already considered its own. Picture a still pond behind a subdivision at dusk, duckweed drifting across the surface, and two eyes catching the last porch light before sinking without a ripple. It does not chase attention. It waits. And in a place where grass, water, and people meet every day, waiting is enough. But East Texas is not the only place where water hides its danger in plain sight. Along the Gulf Coast, the threat does not even need to touch the shore to reach you. The Portuguese man-o-war is not a jellyfish, though most beachgoers assume it is. It is a colony of specialized organisms drifting together as one, carried by wind and current onto Texas Gulf beaches, especially after storms push warm water toward shore. Its trailing tentacles can stretch many feet behind the visible float, so the sting can happen long before a swimmer ever sees the animal responsible. Beach patrols post flag warnings during heavy bloom seasons, and lifeguards report recurring waves of stings whenever wind conditions carry colonies inshore in large numbers. Even a beached, apparently dead specimen can still sting, which is why officials warn visitors never to touch one on the sand. Picture a calm morning on a Gulf beach, a bright blue float bobbing gently in the shallows, almost decorative, and a nearly invisible thread of tentacle drifting just beneath the surface toward a swimmer's ankle. But the water off the Texas coast holds something far larger than most visitors expect, and it does not always stay offshore. Bull sharks are the reason Texas coastal warnings extend far beyond the beach itself. Unlike most sharks, bull sharks tolerate fresh water and have been documented well up major rivers and bay systems, far from the open Gulf. Their build, thick, blunt-nosed, and powerful, lets them hunt in murky water, where sight matters less than instinct. Coastal researchers have confirmed bull shark presence in bay systems where families routinely wade fish, paddleboard, and let children swim in knee-deep water. Officials note most encounters are cases of mistaken identity in cloudy water, which is why caution near murky river mouths matters as much as caution in open surf. Picture a warm, silty bay at low tide, visibility down to a few inches, and a shadow moving through water shallow enough to stand in. Still, not every danger in Texas needs an ocean, a river, or even open water. Some of the smallest threats hide in a boot left by the back door. The striped bark scorpion is common across most of Texas, and that familiarity is exactly why people stop being careful around it. It hides in leaf litter, firewood stacks, boots left on porches overnight, and gaps in exterior siding, especially in the hill country in West Texas, where warm nights draw it out to hunt. Its sting is rarely dangerous to a healthy adult, but poison control centers report it as one of the most common stinging animal calls each year, with more serious reactions in children and older adults. What locals in scorpion country learn quickly is the ritual. Shake out boots before putting them on, check bedding after camping, and use a black light at night, since scorpions glow a pale blue-green under ultraviolet light, revealing how many are actually nearby. Picture a dark porch lit only by a blacklight flashlight, and a dozen faint glowing shapes suddenly visible across the concrete that were invisible seconds earlier. But the danger is not always the predator. Sometimes it is the moment humans stop respecting the signs and stop checking the places they no longer think to look. The American black bear was once considered gone from Texas, and its return is one of the state's least talked about wildlife stories. After decades of near-total absence, black bears have been confirmed moving back into the Trans-Pecos region and parts of East Texas, migrating in from populations in Mexico and neighboring states. Wildlife officials have documented sightings, trail camera footage, and occasional roadway encounters in counties that had not recorded a resident bear population in generations. What changed is habitat connectivity. Conservation corridors, reduced hunting pressure across the border, and shifting food availability have let bears reestablish territory development had pushed them out of decades ago. Locals in Big Bend country describe a mix of pride and unease, witnessing a genuine recovery story while adjusting to livestock losses, damaged bee yards, and the occasional bear wandering closer to a ranch house than expected. Picture a ranch on the edge of Big Bend, moonlight over Ocotillo and volcanic rock, and a dark shape crossing a dry wash that has not held a bear in 100 years. What officials want visitors and residents to understand is simple. This is not an invasion, it is a return. But a return still requires respect, food storage discipline, and distance, the same rules that protect people anywhere bears are reestablishing themselves. That return matters, because it says something larger about Texas as a whole. The wild parts of this state were never truly gone. They were only waiting for the right conditions to come back. Which brings us to the animal locals fear most, and the one they are least likely to actually see. Mountain lions, also called cougars or pumas, persist across the hill country, South Texas brush country, and the mountains of the Trans-Pecos in numbers wildlife biologists still cannot precisely confirm. Texas is the only state with no official mountain lion management plan and no mandatory statewide reporting requirement, so the true number of lions moving through ranchland and rural subdivisions remains genuinely unknown. That uncertainty is the point. A mountain lion does not announce itself the way a rattlesnake or a hive of bees does. It does not circle, growl, or give a countdown of warning signs. Trail camera footage collected across the hill country shows the same pattern again and again. A lion crossing a ranch road at 2 in the morning, utterly unaware it has been recorded, having likely passed within yards of a house without a single dog barking. Confirmed attacks on humans remain extremely rare, and officials stress that mountain lions actively avoid people whenever possible. But avoidance is not absence. Ranchers across lion country report livestock losses that fit a consistent pattern, and hikers on remote trails are increasingly advised to make noise, travel in groups, and avoid moving alone at dawn or dusk, because a lion's strategy is to observe first and decide later. Picture a limestone canyon at first light, fog pooling low over the cedar breaks, and a set of fresh paw prints crossing a hiking trail that was empty an hour earlier, heading in the same direction as the trail itself. This is the animal that ties the entire list together. Not because it is the most frequently encountered, but because it represents exactly what makes Texas wildlife dangerous in the first place. Not visibility, but proximity. Not aggression, but patience. Not a monster in the wilderness, but a neighbor most people will never know they had. None of this means Texas is a place to fear. It means it is a place to understand. Every animal on this list has one thing in common. Each one has learned to live alongside people, not because people invited them in, but because the line between wild land and developed land in Texas keeps moving, year after year, mile after mile. Wildlife officials describe the same pattern for almost every species discussed here. Conflict rises not when animal populations grow, but when human development expands into habitat that never stopped being occupied. The rattlesnake was always in that grass. The alligator was always in that pond. The lion was always crossing that canyon at night. What changed was who else showed up. Respect, not fear, is what actually keeps people safe in Texas. That means checking boots and firewood, giving wildlife space and an exit route, storing food properly in bear country, staying alert near murky water, and remembering that a warning sign, a rattle, a hum, a set of fresh tracks, exists for a reason. Texas is not more dangerous than people think. It is more alive than people think, and the two are easy to confuse. If this state's hidden wildlife caught you off guard, subscribe for the next investigation before it disappears from your feed. Next time, we go beyond Texas into the overlooked corners of America where a different kind of predator has been quietly moving back in.